Thanks for tuning into the video where we're going to be covering British comedian Ricky Gervais and why he's brought to tears every time he revisits a certain scene from the movie Afterlife, among other interesting Ricky Gervais facts. So grab a box of tissues and prepare to travel into your feels as we see what makes one of the most blunt and gritty comedians tear up. First, a look into the early years of a lad named Ricky. Ricky was born on June 25th, 1961 to Lawrence Raymond, Jerry Gervais, and Ava Sophia House. He is the youngest of four children and grew up in the Whitley suburb of Reading in England. He attended the Whitley Park schools until he was of college age and began attending the University of College London in 1980. He originally planned on studying biology but made a change later on and graduated with an upper second-class honors degree in philosophy. During his time at college, he met his partner, Jane Fallon. They've been together since 1982. Now that we know about his early years, we can get a better understanding of the man himself. Next, let's talk a bit about Ricky's history in the world of comedy and entertainment. During his later years in college, Ricky and his best friend, Bill McRae, started a band called Siona Dancing. The two were a new wave pop duo and had a few hits in England as well as one chart topper in the Philippines. Ricky was also a manager for a band called Suede before they garnered popularity in the early 1990s. Another route of Ricky's in entertainment was through his ventures into radio. He was the head of speech at the alternative radio station XFM. First person he interviewed as an assistant ended up being Stephen Merchant, who would end up being the co-star to Ricky on the wildly popular podcast, The Ricky Gervais Show, which featured fan favorite Carl Pinkerton as well. Stephen Merchant would also end up being the catalyst for perhaps what Ricky is best known for, The Office. Merchant and Ricky are executive producers for the UK office as well as the American version. After the success of The Office, Ricky would go on to star in many more shows and movies, eventually creating, directing, and starring in the Netflix drama Afterlife in 2018. Throughout his career, he's won awards and been labeled as one of the UK's most influential people. Seems that he is in no way planning on slowing down. So now, let's talk about the scene that made Ricky emotional. In episode 3, there's a scene in which actress Kerry Godliman, who plays Tony's wife Lisa, is shown in a video she filmed for him in her hospital bed, reading the poem Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep by Mary Elizabeth Fry. The performance is stunning to say the least, and it's been the source of Ricky Gervais choking and tearing up no matter how many times he watches it. Gervais has said in press junkets, "There's one scene I've watched it 70 times and it still absolutely chokes me up. It's when Lisa reads the poem in episode 6, honestly, I gag. It's just an amazing poem. It's such an amazing performance and what's happening while it's happening. Honestly, that poem, I've loved it for years. I've always wanted to use it. It's devastating. It was one take and I looked around and everyone was quiet. So yeah, it's that one for me." As you can tell, if you have any feeling for the man Ricky Gervais is, this hit home for him on many levels. He's usually incredibly sarcastic and nonchalant. For him to put as much emphasis on a scene of this nature speaks volumes to the impact it must have on him as a person. It's actually quite delightful to see this side of Ricky, as it's one we see the fans are hard-pressed to catch a glimpse of usually. Up next, a bit of a recap of Afterlife Season 1. The show takes place in Tambury, a made-up town where Tony Johnson, played by Gervais, works as a newspaper writer. Everything in Tony's world is turned upside down when his wife suddenly dies of breast cancer. Tony becomes increasingly suicidal as he becomes bitter towards everyone around him. He makes a decision with himself to say and do anything he feels like doing or saying, disregarding how it makes others feel around him. He determines this to be a sort of superpower, but everything begins to backfire as people begin taking pity on him and try to get him out of his funk. By the end of season 1, Tony's worldview changes as he begins believing that the meaning of life is about being as nice and helpful as possible to people who deserve it. While on the flip side, he believes that bad people should also be treated badly. Happy to say the show has picked up for more seasons, so the character of Tony decides not to kill himself. Spoiler, I know. Now for a bit about season 2. In season 2, Tony goes about his life in a much more altruistic way, even deciding to accept going on a date with Emma, a nurse who takes care of Tony's elderly father. Although the two decide to take things slowly, this is a big step for Tony, who at one point found no will to carry on in life. Another scene that is quite telling is when when Tony talks to a semi-retired owner of the newspaper company he works for and convinces him not to sell the paper. The way he describes the selling of the business directly relates to the way Tony was looking at suicide. You can kill yourself at any point, why not see how today goes? At the end of the season, however, Tony again becomes suicidal and comes close to taking his own life after his father ends up dying. He is close to swallowing a handful of sleeping pills when Emma stops by his house at the last second, tells him she wants to be with him no matter how slow he wants to take things. Again, close call, but our protagonist survives another season, and thank God, because season 3 was picked up by Netflix as well. Now, what's happened in season 3? As time goes on, the relationship between Tony and Emma remains strained as Tony is still not over the death of his wife. He also doesn't want anyone to think he's replacing his wife in any way, shape, or form. In one scene, his brother-in-law invites Tony and Emma for happy hour and ends up gifting them a cactus to try and coax the two to get closer. Tony, who's already reluctant to show up to the shindig, leaves enraged and ends up throwing the cactus at an SUV that cuts him off. We see that although Tony has begun to have some closure in regards to his wife, the fact of the matter is that it's probably going to be years before he considers getting into another serious relationship. At the end of the season, we see all the characters we've come to know at a fair the town holds, which has been around for over 500 years. The ending is a motif saying that life always goes on and we never know just what lurks around the corner. Everyone dies one day, but for most of us, today's not that day. Season 3 ends with Tony fading into the background, another sign pointing to the fact life goes on. Seems that season 3 will be the end for Afterlife, as no other seasons are currently in the works. Up next, let's talk about what's next for Ricky Gervais. Season 3 of Afterlife debuted on Netflix in January of this year, and they wrapped filming in June 2021. So it would seem that Ricky might want to take some time off before becoming involved in another project. The emotional baggage Afterlife carries is enough to become emotionally invested in a show, especially one that's being written, directed, and starred in by a single person. The amount of time and energy Ricky was devoting to this show is beyond belief, and if anyone needs a bit of a break, it's absolutely him. There have been questions as to whether season 3 will be the end for Afterlife, and Ricky responded by saying, "You never truly know what Netflix." He said Netflix could offer me a castle and an animal sanctuary on an island, but at this moment in time, nope, this is it. So unfortunately for diehard fans of the show, this is it, but never say never. Thanks for tuning into this video, and we hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we have liked making it. Ricky Gervais remains one of the best comedians out of London, or even the world, and we love his work more and more as time goes on. Whether it's his classic interactions with Pinkington and Merchant, or his dramatic role in Afterlife, he always performs his roles amazingly. We'll be keeping a keen eye out for any of his future endeavors, and we know you will too. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.